The Washington Nationals have added yet another young piece to this already very young coaching staff as they have hired Simon Matthews to be their pitching coach moving forward. And all it took was one word from him that I needed to know that this guy is for real.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And I am your host, Ryan Clary. You can find me over on Twitter at Ryan Clary11. And also check us out wherever you get your podcast when you look up Locked On Nationals. And later on in today's show, we've got a discussion on some former Nationals being hired as coaches and in some cases managers in baseball. So let's have that discussion later on because I think Nationals fans will want to hear it. And is there a path forward for them? Maybe coming back to DC. So stay tuned for that discussion later on in the show today. And in the second segment, the Nationals coaching staff in the front office is taking shape. But as we know, they are addressing a major need that each and every single one of their hires has a deep background in this particular thing. I'll unveil what that is later on in the program today. But we start off discussing the Nationals making a couple of hires, but most importantly, hiring Simon Matthews as their pitching coach. And there was one word that sold me on this guy, and that is Driveline. Let's tell you all about that and much more about Simon Matthews. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. So the Nationals have made it official. They have hired new pitching coach, 30-year-old Simon Matthews, coming over from the Cincinnati Reds, where he worked as the assistant pitching coach in 2025. And furthermore than that, he has been on their minor league staff all the way back since 2021. And he was actually even previously before that with Driveline Baseball and Push Performance, which are academies and kind of training programs for pitchers. But as we said, I told you that there is one word that sold me on what Simon Matthews is, and that is Driveline. For those who do not know what Driveline Baseball is, this is just kind of what it is in general, so you get an idea of what it exactly is. Driveline Baseball is a well-known player development organization that specializes in data-driven training for baseball players, especially pitchers and hitters. Founded by Kyle Bodie in Washington State, Driveline combines biomechanics, technology, and analytics to improve performance. You see all sorts of different guys use this tool and use that company as kind of something that drives them through the offseason. A lot of Nationals fans, or a lot of Nationals players rather, they have been using Driveline, and this is not a new concept here in DC. But what is a new concept about this is that Nationals coaching staffs in years past have not really utilized this tool. In fact, I mean, I was kind of joking about this with a friend earlier yesterday, but I think that I don't think I've ever heard a national staffer say the word Driveline publicly. And while that's not the end all be all, like you still have to play the game, you still have to coach them up, and you can't just go in the offseason and make yourself an all-star player just by going through Driveline. But it certainly helps you get to that point. And that is the way that these modern era players, this is how they train. And this is what the great organizations do. They have their players go to Driveline. And now you have got one of your Nationals coaching staff members who has perfected that craft and who has been a big helping member to Driveline Baseball and their success over the past few years. So when the Nationals brought over this guy, Simon Matthews, first thing I thought was, oh my God, this is another 30-year-old. Blake Butera is 33 years old being a manager. We already discussed that. I think some people have questions surrounding it. I'm not really all that into it, but Simon Matthews at 30 years old being a pitching coach, that is a pretty big jump. But this is someone who, again, comes from the Cincinnati Reds, in which they had a really good pitching staff this season, and that really guided them in the second half as they made that last wild card spot. Unfortunately, got swept by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the wild card round, but still, this is kind of what the Nationals are doing, and we'll get into more of what exactly they're addressing later on in the show today. But what you have to know about Simon Matthews is this: he has designed throwing programs for pitchers in the past with an emphasis on improving velocity, movement patterns, and also some arm care in there as well. That is from Spencer Nussbaum of the Washington Post. And that is a background that I think should just be music to Nationals fans' ears. I cannot get over the fact that the Nationals under Jim Hickey, I think Jim Hickey was a better pitching coach than what some people may envision with him. But also, this is someone who is not all that into analytics. Jim Hickey, I remember a few years ago on opening day, he was on with the Grant and Danny show on 106.7 The Fan, and they asked him about analytics and how he uses that data in his day-to-day operations, and he kind of scoffed at it and said, like, yeah, I guess we use that, but also it's boots on the ground approach. I'm paraphrasing what exactly he said, but he kind of brushed off that question and said, we're not really that into that. You got to be. In my opinion, what went wrong with the Nationals is that they did not invest in analytics. Not only do I believe that this team is now investing in analytics, but they are now making the correct hires into getting people in the correct places to make these big time decisions. The Nationals have not been able to figure out development in pitching the past few seasons, honestly. They have not been able to figure this out whatsoever. I think their number one issue has been the lack of investment in data and analytics and coaching as well. You now have someone who, in my mind, has perfected that craft. You now have someone with Simon Matthews who only has one season up in the big league clubhouse, but has still made a huge impact in that area. And everyone is raving about what this 30-year-old can do. This is definitely a risk for the Nationals. Let's just say that right now. But is it this huge risk that is going to come with, man, if the Nationals don't make a jump this season, it's all on Simon Matthews? No, it's not going to be that way. But what I do think is that this is a big risk because this is the Nationals completely turning around the ship and exactly what they should be doing. Butera and Taboni, they have got a vision for this thing. The vision right now is they want data-driven coaches and coaches that are able to coach people up, obviously, number one, but get that data to their players and get them just up to speed on what they should be doing. This is an organization that completely lacked in this department. But right now, you now have people in place that allows the Nationals to finally get up to speed in the year of 2026 and beyond. I love this hire. Again, I'm not going to tell you that I know everything about him. I do know someone who works inside the Reds front office, and I texted him about Simon Matthews, and he said, quote unquote, he's a stud and a huge difference maker. I think that's a big deal for me. And coming from a clubhouse like the Reds under Terry Francona, keep that in mind as well. Terry Francona, a somewhat old school manager who is one of the best managers in all of baseball, coming from the Reds organization with Simon Matthews, this was someone who at 29 years old was named the assistant pitching coach under Terry Francona. That should not be something that is completely slept on whatsoever. This is someone, again, with Simon Matthews at just 29, was in the coaching circle with Terry Francona and played a big role in that clubhouse. I love what this hire brings to us. And again, if you have issues with that, one of the best managers of our generation, Terry Francona, is the one who hired him and brought him onto his big league clubhouse. That is a big deal. And I think that right now, with what the Nationals need most is, again, that analytical hire. And I think that we are getting that right now at the Nationals. But also, they did not just do that. They also hired yesterday a big league catching coordinator, and that is Bobby Wilson, who has been with the Texas Rangers for the past few seasons under Bruce Bochy. And that is a pretty big hire. I mean, I saw one person, Kevin Franson, who obviously is on Masson with the Washington Nationals, and he said, huge hire. This is a big deal. He helped Jonah Heim win a Gold Glove a few years ago. He has been a big part in developing some of their big league catching with the Rangers and has been a big part in developing guys defensively and has been a huge guru behind the plate there under Bruce Bochy. This is a 42-year-old who actually right now is the second oldest member of this coaching staff, because you've got your bench coach, Michael Johns, who I believe is in his 50s at this point. But also, then you've got Blake Butera at 33, who's a puppy, and the Simon Matthews, who's basically an infant at this point on this staff. But this coaching staff is starting to take shape. But the one clear thing that has really separated a lot of these guys is one thing, and that is what Paul Timoni has been talking about time and time again in the Nationals. They've addressed one of their biggest needs this offseason. So what is that? I'll tell you after this. Right now, the NFL season is back, and yes, it is with our friends at Game Time. There is nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating, but that is why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. And I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. And even this past weekend, I pulled up Game Time for the Lions-Commanders game. I saw tickets as low as $68 right before kickoff. I got the Flash Zone deal. I got to enjoy the Commanders game, but also not really enjoy it. It was a bad game, but still, Game Time made it enjoyable because it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's always less stressful than all the other sites out there. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And we are back where we got to talk about this Nationals coaching staff, and we'll put a bow on just kind of what this staff looks like as of right now. But later on, stay tuned, because a couple former Nationals have gotten some coaching gigs, but is it here in DC? We'll discuss that later on in the show today. But right now, we got to talk about just this coaching staff and kind of what it looks like at this point. And so right now you've got your manager with Blake Butera. You've got your bench coach with Michael Johns coming over from the Tampa Bay Rays. You've got your pitching coach with Simon Matthews coming over from the Cincinnati Reds, and Terry Francona, the 30-year-old the Nationals just hired yesterday. And also the Nationals last night hired catching coordinator Bobby Wilson from the Texas Rangers. So that is what you have got. But it is clear that these hires, Paul Timoni and Blake Butera, are addressing a major need in some of these guys' backgrounds, and what that is player development. Now, player development is a phrase that I think might be used a little loosely, because when I hear player development, I think of a GM up in the suites over at Nationals Park. I don't really think coaches, but when you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what player development is, you can obviously see the ties from player development and coaching and how those kind of two things can marry each other. But I think that right now, like, they are addressing such a need for coaching. Nationals fans, in my opinion, I think a lot unfairly over the years, they have really attacked this coaching staff by the Braves to be their assistant hitting coach, whether it be Jim Hickey, whether it be like Sean Doolittle or Davey Martinez, the manager, or Gerardo Parra, your first base coach. Like, the Nationals and this fan base, they have been fed up with this coaching staff, and I think in some ways unfairly. But also, there are some real concerns with what this staff was. But now you're kind of starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with some of these hires and these new hires the Nationals are bringing on. They clearly know what they need to do. They need to get real coaches in this building. They need to get 2026 and beyond coaches in this building. Jim Hickey and Darnell Coles, they had their days as really good coaches in baseball. I think it's fair to say that the game passed them. You are getting these young, talented, up-and-coming coaches in this building to help this young, talented, and up-and-coming team. That is a big part in this. Like, I think a lot of people are going to say, like, well, players aren't going to buy into this coaching staff. Like, they're so young. You can say that about the coaches in these players. You have got Dylan Cruz at 23 years old. Brady House at like 21, James Wood at like 22, 23 years old, CJ Abrams at 24 or 25 years old, Mackenzie Gore at 27. I guess he's old on this roster. Dalen Lyle at what, 21, 22 years old again. Then you've got a couple of other guys coming up. Eli Willits is 17 years old right now, down in the minor leagues, your number one prospect. You've got Travis Sikora, who's like 20, 21 years old. Harleen Susanna, like 21 years old. This is a young and up-and-coming team. I don't think the respect thing of age is going to throw any of these people off. These are all respectable coaches that have major things that the Nationals really need to have. And that is background in coaching and player development. But not just that. It's also background in analytics and player development. The Nationals are addressing their big need this offseason, and that is coaching/player development. You bring in Justin Horowitz from the Pittsburgh Pirates, who has done a tremendous job running the draft for them the past few seasons. You bring in Devin Pearson, a player development background under Paul Taboni with the Boston Red Sox. He's going to be your boots on the ground kind of guy to help develop these guys. Paul Taboni, a player development background, and all sorts of other. Obviously, right here in town, you have Blake Butera, who's got a player development background. Like, the Nationals are addressing exactly what they need to do, and that is to get better in coaching up these guys. How many times over these past few seasons, I'm not picking on CJ Abrams here, he's just an example, but how many times have you seen CJ Abrams make the same mistake? How many times this season did you see Jacob Young make the same mistake on the base path? How many times did you see Dalen Lyle take the wrong route in right field this year? Not many corrections there. That, to me, is coaching. I feel as if a lot of the errors, especially on the base path these past few years, has been a lack of coaching, because base running is all about IQ. And I'm not saying that the Nationals don't have smart coaches or had smart coaches. I'm not saying they don't have smart players. But you clearly can tell that while David Martinez did try to put an emphasis on it this past spring training, the message was not clear to the players. And that you have to have guys coached up and you have to get them in the best possible scenario in order to achieve. And that is by coaching them up and developing them through your system and having a process. Process is going to be a big word now, because there is going to be a process within this coaching staff. There's going to be a process within this front office. There is going to be a process and a standard that the Nationals will have to follow. And with all of that in mind, using data-driven analysis like Driveline Baseball, or having backgrounds in teaching guys online during the pandemic, or having the background of being in a major league clubhouse, or having a Michael Johns background, who, by the way, has a big background in defense and base running as well. They are addressing the needs that not only we know are needs, but they understand that that is a need as well. This offseason, for Nats fans out there, how can you not feel good? Like, seriously, how can you not feel good about this? They are addressing exactly what they need. They understand. They have looked themselves in the mirror and said, we're fat. Here's what we have to do. We're going to go to the gym and we're going to eat better and we're going to eat our vegetables and take our vitamins. This past regime, in my opinion, they looked themselves in the mirror and kind of told themselves a lie. I think that they were telling themselves, we're in pretty good shape. We've got this old background. I used to do it back in the day when I was younger. I used to eat healthier and not really worry about my diet all too much. You're older now, man. You got to change up your ways. And I think that with Paul Taboni and this staff and Blake Butera and company, they have figured out exactly what they need. And now the Nationals, they're starting to figure things out and they're starting to really put things in shape that I think a lot of Nationals fans will really, really end up liking. So we'll discuss more on this coaching staff, but I just got to talk about this because this is a huge deal for me. And I think it's a huge deal for Nationals fans out there as well. And is there a chance that we see a couple of former Nationals right back here in the nation's capital in a handful of years? We'll discuss that after this. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to next fourth quarter comebacks. And plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a larger payout. And it keeps every game so exciting, especially when your team's making that late push, whether it be Alex Sarr going over 30 points or over 10 rebounds. Maybe it's Bilal Coulibaly going over on the points. You can do all of that and much more with our friends at FanDuel. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're back here on Locked On Nationals. If you have not done so already, look up Locked On Nationals over on YouTube to catch the video version of this podcast. But later on in the show this week, we'll be discussing a lot more with this Nationals coaching staff and really some of the hires that we expect to happen over these next few days. And the Nationals have yet to hire a full-time hitting coach. I certainly expect that to happen anytime soon because these hirings have been happening quick and fast. I would expect to see a new Nationals hitting coach by the end of this week. And also some rumors as obviously the GM meetings are happening this week. So stay tuned for that conversation and much more right here on Locked On Nationals. But as Nationals fans know, I don't really think we discussed it too much because the Nationals were, too busy making their own hires. But Kurt Suzuki was named the manager of the LA Angels. And that was pretty interesting in itself. Like, this is someone who is still in the game as of a few years ago and hasn't really done too much as far as any managerial background goes. Like, has not worked his way in really any coaching scenario whatsoever. But Kurt Suzuki was named as the manager of the LA Angels in a one-year deal. That was pretty interesting. The hire that he just made yesterday is awesome. He hired first base coach Adam Eaton. You now have two 2019 Nationals, two huge pieces to that Nationals team on that roster as the coaching staff for the Angels. And I just got to say, I cannot wait to see Spanky Adam Eaton as a first base coach. That is an electric guy. Like, he is kind of the one person I think I would love to have on this coaching staff right now. And I think the hires that the Nationals make over at first base coach and the third base coach, like, let's have some fun with it. I've gotten what I've wanted. I've gotten my analytical guys here in the building. Maybe let's go out there and hire, let's say, Howie Kendrick from the Philadelphia Phillies, who has helped them as one of their hitting instructors. That would be kind of cool. And honestly, I think he's a name that hasn't really been brought up too much. He would easily be someone, in my opinion, that the Nationals could certainly go after. Like, I don't really know his background in data and analytics. Obviously, we know him as a World Series champion and a World Series hero right here in the nation's capital, but he's now helping out Kevin Long in the Philadelphia Phillies. It would certainly be nice if we could get him right here in town, back in Washington, D.C. Even then, there's further guys than just that. Like Craig Stammen was just hired as the Padres manager. Maybe you bring on Tyler Clippard as a pitching analyst or someone who comes in the building, or maybe you go out there and hire a Ben Revere, or maybe you go out and hire Denard Span to be on this staff. Like, I don't know, but I can tell you this much. I kind of want a former national in this building. That seems kind of fun. And I'm not saying that like, oh, I'd much rather have the Angels situation. I'll tell you right now, I would much rather have the national situation with where they are compared to the LA Angels. You may disagree, but I think we could have a certain discussion about that maybe later on this offseason. But with where the Nationals are and where they are headed, this would be a pretty fun hire to bring in like a Howie Kendrick type. And I think the Nationals genuinely might do something like that. Like, I think a lot of these guys, number one, they are a lot of young players, former players here. And Simon Matthews actually came up within the LA Angels organization. He was drafted by them, I believe, back in 2017, I think, and worked his way up to AAA, but kind of fizzled out there in the minors and then became an online pitching coordinator for Driveline and some other technology companies. But the Nationals right now bring in a former player. That's kind of all I want to say here for this final segment. So stay tuned for much more conversation surrounding this Nationals coaching staff. I think that there's a lot to be loving if you're a Nationals fan at this point. And I truly do believe in that. I really think that the Nationals are hitting this process just out of the park, and they have done exactly what Nationals fans should be dreaming of moving forward. So we'll have much more discussions on this and also some trade rumors that continue to churn out from the GM meetings in Las Vegas, and things seem to be moving in the Mackenzie Gore market. So we'll have that discussion on tomorrow's show. But until then, have a good one. Go Nats.